Hello, and welcome into episode 2 of the Stomp the Bus show. My name is Mark Harris, and I'm with my co-host.
What's up, guys? It's Darren Allen. Happy to be back for another week, as always, with Mark. You're the highlight of the show, my friend. Just seeing your face on my screen is what I look forward to every week.
Thank you. I actually showered today, so I was hoping that would
That's rare for you.
bring in the I know, yeah, bring in the radiant glow.
What's the special occasion? The show? Is that why you showered?
Work, actually, my job.
Ooh.
And this is actually not our job. We
do
the
this for
YouTube
free
ad
at this
subscribes
time.
haven't come in just yet, so in
No.
time.
We're
Anyway,
playing the long game.
that's right. That is right. Well, glad to have everyone back watching again. Not as much conference realignment news, I could say at this time. This past week, there are a few kind of news and notes. I'd say one of the biggest things that's come out is last week, it was reported, maybe it was earlier this week, but the SEC saying we're good on expansion for now. I mean, emphasis on like the for now part, but I think
Why should they? They're the superpower of college football right now. They have no incentive to. The Big Ten adds 2 teams. They're like, okay, they're trying to keep up with us.
Right.
They're the pace car of this whole thing. That's who everybody's trying to catch. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Right. I think the only counter to that would be is people concerned that, the SEC is going to add Clemson and Florida State, So, but who knows? Like they could totally be at 20 teams 5 years from now. So
yeah,
it's definitely not set in stone, but I also don't think it means you're going to wake up 2 weeks from now and see a tweet that North Carolina and Clemson are going to the SEC. I think that it's probably on their end, just kind of extinguishing a fire before it starts type of thing. So that's good. And that's good with any tangentially related Pac-12 ACC merger, because it wouldn't be an official merger, but partnership, because the only way that any Pac-12 team would want to do that is if the premier brands in the ACC are in there. So,
yeah. And I mean, I'm just going off of kind of a hunch here, but I think we've seen the bulk of the moves, at least for this offseason. I think what we have now is kind of what we're going to have going into 2022. I think we're going to continue to hear rumblings. We're going to continue to hear, the ACC is looking at X, Y, and Z, or the SEC is going to consider this, that, and the other. But like the way it looks right now, I don't think we're going to have any groundbreaking news. And I think the Pac-12 sentiment about this whole expansion thing is a pretty good indication of that. I know George Kolakov, did I say that right? Kolakov?
Close enough. Klyabkov.
Yeah. I'll get it. But I know he said that the Pac-12 isn't panicking. The schools that are left in the Pac-12 are kind of just waiting to see. I don't expect any significant news to come out about realignment, at least for the remainder of this offseason.
Famous last words. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, tomorrow we're going to find out that the SEC is creating their own league.
Right.
And it's just going to be college football in the SEC, which they probably could do. And it would be
they could, like the Big Ten and the SEC could just pull away from college football. But I think if they did that, it would be bad for them in the long term, because they would just shut out so many fans that wouldn't watch otherwise.
Right. I was being facetious. I don't think that's happening tomorrow, Mark.
No, probably not. Yeah. So basically, and then another kind of similarly, I think I said that right. Similarly related article.
We'll go with it.
It came out of Portland journalist John Canzano.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the wrong article.
Basically, it was a quiet weekend for the Pac-12 ADs and stuff. And the big theme with the Pac-12 is they're kind of just waiting. In a few days after the news of USC and UCLA leaving, the Pac-12 released a statement. We're negotiating with our TV partners. And I think the point of that is all these schools, they just want to know exactly how much their next deal is going to be worth. And same with the Big 12. So that's why, at least for now, there is going to be a bunch of rumbling, because no one's just going to make some huge jump out of a panic move, and we kind of touched on that last week. So I think that, I think that we're probably going to have a Pac-12. Like, I think the season, whatever the Pac-12 season is going to be, kind of just what we thought it would be anyway, if we were analyzing this 2 months ago before the news came out. So I think that that's good. And I just hope that the leaders at ASU, Michael Crow, Ray Anderson, everyone is figuring out what the best future plan is for them, whether it's staying in the Pac-12 or jumping to the Big 12 if need be. Just whichever gives them the best, most resources, the best footing going forward,
Right. And in Canzano's article, it looks like they're pretty confident staying at 10 members, the Pac-12 or the Pac-10.
It would be the Pac-10, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, the numbers point to the remaining 10 sticking together. Dialogue has been candid, productive, and forward-thinking. I don't know. I think I don't expect to see anything significant for the foreseeable future, just based on the sentiment that I'm reading here and what the athletic directors have sort of hinted at. So.
Right. And he's getting his sources from Pac-12 people. So
right. And right here,
that has to be taken into account, but I also don't think they're just, well, I mean, they could be outright lying to him, who knows, but.
Right. And it says that the four corner schools wouldn't leave unless something else happened, unless the conference was splintered first. So as far as ASU leaving the conference, I don't think there's anything significant on the horizon, in that regard. It looks like we're kind of in a holding pattern here.
Yep.
So
and so I saw, and kind of related to that, I saw an article from John Wilner out of the San Jose Mercury News, and it was it was going through all 10 of the remaining Pac-10 schools and examining how afraid they should be in terms of, we don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12, so it could fold and whatever, so why each team should feel the way that they do. I'll go to the highest levels first. So he had Washington and Utah, their fear index as 0. Each of them is 0. Basically just because they're both in big, big markets, have strong fan support, like passionate fan support, which differentiates them from ASU a little bit, because ASU's fan base is not the most passionate, not the least passionate, but also not the most passionate.
I think ASU's fans, though, are it's a very small contingent of people, but that small contingent are the passionate bunch. I mean, it's a very small contingent, but that passionate small group is extremely passionate.
Well, for sure. And also the thing with ASU that's kind of makes them a weird is that in terms of they don't have the most passionate fans of all these schools, but they also just have so many bleeping alums and so many people that have gone to the school.
What did we say about the bleep thing, Mark?
Oh yeah. They just have so many alums and so many potential halfway football fans that if and when ASU gets an ex-coach, and who knows, maybe they get the next Mike Leach or something.
Right. It's lighten
up the scoreboard. That could reel some people in,
Yeah, it's a very fair weather college football market.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely. Sure. Which is,
if you're an ASU fan listening to this and arguing with look, I wish ASU fans were as passionate as Oregon fans or whatever.
Just be self-aware. We're a very fair weather fan base. Don't ignore the facts, okay?
Right.
But that's interesting because I'm looking at this article too, and you're right. The zeros are looks like Washington and Utah. You said,
yeah.
But the second lowest fear index on this is ASU.
Well, actually, I'd say they're the third, because he had Oregon's fear index as high with an asterisk, because the asterisk is they're trying to compete for national titles type of deal. So they're definitely above us. But yes, that you're getting to the point that the ASU would be 4, and he has them as low. And I think a lot of people, there's obviously a lot of pessimism in the ASU fan base, as there should be, based on what the whole scope of the football operation is. I'm not saying the football team, because I think this team could actually be decent this year, but the whole scope of the football operation is not well with the investigation and having Herm Edwards still, which is crazy. Anyway, one of the concerns is, oh, well, how much will the investigation affect potential realignment suitors, you know? And Wilner basically says almost not at all, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at I'm reading through it right now too, and it looks like the crux of this outlook is the media market. And that kind of aligns with everything we've been talking about with realignment. And ASU does have the benefit of playing in, I'm racking my brain here, and if I misspeak, probably next to Salt Lake City, one of the biggest actual markets in the Pac. Well, Los Angeles.
No, right now it's the second biggest market in the Pac-12 behind Seattle.
I mean, after Seattle, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City are probably the biggest markets in the Pac-12.
Well, and the Bay Area, but the Bay Area it's weird because
like Berkeley is the Bay Area is really,
and Stanford,
right?
Like we're saying ASU fans are fair weather, but like compared to like Cal fans and Stanford fans, we're like Bills Mafia, you know?
Right. Well, those are renowned football and athletic schools. Everybody, that Stanford and Cal are called the Alabama and Auburn of the West Coast.
Of the Silicon
Everybody
Valley.
knows that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they are renowned athletic schools, but in like swimming and water polo and sailing.
That's why we're the Conference of Champions.
Like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, Wilner's whole point is NCAA investigation doesn't matter in the long run. Market size matters. It's not the only thing that matters, but it does matter. So I think if you're an ASU fan thinking like, oh, what if we go to the Mountain West? What blah, blah, blah. Like that's not going to happen. There's no worst case scenario is either staying in the Pac-12 or the Big 12. So from that perspective,
the Pac-12 is the floor.
Yeah. So that's comforting, I guess. It's kind of comforting. He had Colorado and U of A in the moderate category. I think Arizona and Colorado are very similar. Like both football programs are just completely irrelevant. Like ASU's football program is irrelevant when it comes to like, how do I say this? ASU football, it's not as irrelevant as U of A's football program. Like U of A's football, they
based
won
on
game.
Based on the outlook here, it almost seems like a piggyback situation, right? Where as long as U of A decides that we have to move in lockstep, which is what Wilner says, is as long as U of A decides that we have to do what ASU does and we have to sort of work as a team here in this realignment landscape, they should be okay. But as he says, with UCLA splitting off from Cal, we saw what happened with Cal there, right? Cal became a little more irrelevant with UCLA splitting for the Big Ten. So as long as ASU and U of A sort of team up here, then the outlook isn't, and I think that's what Wilner is getting at here with the fear index being moderate. As long as they do what they probably should do, they're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I don't look, as an ASU fan, it would be hilarious if ASU somehow got in like a Big Ten invite 5 years down the road and U of A didn't. Like that would be pretty funny, but it's probably not going to happen that way, you know, like.
Yeah, but ASU fans would lose their Super Bowl, so it doesn't.
Territorial Cup hater Colton Dodgson.
It's the worst rivalry in sport.
Oh, it's okay. Mark Harris is saying it is not. Send your hate mail to
Aaron Allen says it sucks.
Darren Allen, yeah.
Oregon State is extreme.
Yeah, Oregon State and Wazoo are both extreme, and I mean that kind of makes sense. Like they're both very small. Wazoo has a more passionate fan base than people think, but they're in Corvallis and Pullman, and they still aren't like enormous fan bases. And then Cal and Stanford, he both has as high. I feel like Stanford shouldn't be in the same category as Cal, just because Stanford has so much more money and more of like a football tradition than Cal does. At least Stanford, like you have some memories of them being good, even though their stadium is literally like 15% full on a game day. But
dude, don't knock the farm. The farm's a good place to watch a game.
It is. Well, it is. It's very relaxing, comforting, great weather. I mean, You might see a Heisman caliber running back. I feel like they always have one of those guys.
Yeah,
Bryce
there's
Love
only
when we
one of those
covered it.
guys
Yeah.
running behind. Like I'm trying to do the math in my head.
They're called
Four,
offensive linemen.
yeah, running behind 4 tight ends
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and the fullback.
Yeah. So I think that's just some good background information. I also saw another article. I didn't put this one on our show sheet, but saw it at work today. It was from Sports Illustrated, and this Pat 40, he ranked all 69, nice, of the of the Power 5 schools, including the schools that are going to go to the Big 12, like Houston, UCF, BYU, and I'm forgetting the other one, Cincinnati. And he ranked all of them by, there was 5 factors that contributed to it. It was football success, academics, total like athletic success in terms of like the full scope of the other sports, TV ratings, and then one that I don't know if he should have counted, but stadium, just attendance in the game, which that probably has the least effect on actual decisions being made. But so it's not a perfect list, but the number one team in there was actually, Colton, guess the number one team. It shouldn't be too difficult.
This is out of the schools moving to the
No. This is out of all the Power 5 schools.
Oh, okay. Number 1, Alabama.
No, it was Ohio State was number 1.
Ooh, okay.
Because it's
Was
not just
Alabama
about
too?
it's not just about like winning on the field. It's about the whole scope of what you bring.
Okay. So
But I mean, yeah, Alabama was
Alabama's
like
too.
5th.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Who was
I think, yeah, I think Georgia was higher than Alabama. Michigan, I believe, was number 2. And then ASU, they had ASU. Where do you think ASU came in?
Ooh,
69 teams.
out of 69. Oh man, I'm gonna say somewhere in the 30s. Am I warm?
No, yeah, they came
Okay.
in. They
Hang
came
on,
in.
don't tell me. Don't tell me.
All right.
So 30s. I'm gonna say 30 because we're the conference of champions and because our GPA is so high. I'm gonna say the front half of 30, 33.
Close. They were just 30 on the dot.
Oh,
30, and then they were actually tied with North Carolina State for 30, which that feels about right. Like North Carolina State is a very ASU type program in that like they're good. They're a good team, but they're also like, you're never seeing North Carolina State in the playoff either, you know? And they're both because North Carolina State's in Raleigh. So they're both in cities. They
right.
have like on paper reasons that they probably could be better than they are.
And we've never seen Russell Wilson at ASU, so.
Right. Well, you could argue that because they had Phillip Rivers too.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Glennon, who not a great quarterback, but an NFL. I think he's still in the league. So
wait, I forgot NC State was QBU.
Yeah, no, they've had a lot of, and I don't think they've made a New Year's Six bowl in the same span that ASU hasn't. So like, that would be a weirdly frustrating team to root for because
wait, what's
literally like what?
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking, what's the most recent New Year's Six bowl that ASU has made?
Dude, I think it was the 96 Rose Bowl.
Oh, so that's more recent than anything NC State has done.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not for, I don't, not for sure. I just don't remember. Like I've watched college football for about 13 years, and I haven't seen them in a New Year's Six bowl. ASU obviously hasn't either.
Right. You said ASU in New Year's Six, and I was like, that's like oil and water. So.
They'll get close. They'll get close oftentimes, but they won't get there. So yeah, I think, but I think that the fact that we're next to a team like North Carolina State in that type of list speaks to like, oh, this actually like this list makes sense. You know, it's not like totally out of whack. And so
it feels right.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, if college football does come to some point where it's like, there's 50 teams and that's the D1 and it's not really conferences anymore. It's just like the 50 like programs that can actually have the, capability of competing at the highest level, or, just being in the top league. I feel like ASU would make that cut, even though maybe if it was solely based on on-field performance, they might not. But the fact that you have the Phoenix media market, even if it's not a fully engaged ASU fan base in the Phoenix media market, the fact that you just have that is a huge just benefit to them.
Right. And I think over the duration of this podcast, I think however long we do it, Mark, and I think we're going to do it for years to come.
Yeah.
I'm going to be extremely critical of ASU because they've broken my heart so many times. The second that I get invested, the second that I'm like, wait, okay, I'm ready to get hurt again, we have a Utah game or an Oregon State game or a game where U of A doesn't have to pass in the second half, whatever it is. But I don't remember a season where ASU had like an Oregon State type season. Right. I feel like they're always putting a team on the field. And I'm thinking back to the season where I think it was 2019 where ASU beat Justin Herbert and Oregon.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're always capable of pulling things off like that. And I think a top 50 program, I will absolutely give them that. That is the one thing I will concede. I think they're one of the top 50 programs in the country. And if we eventually got to that point where the SEC decides to annex the NCAA in some merger,
right?
And the SEC is now the league and just absorbs the top 50 teams, ASU would be in that. I think ASU is a top 50 team in the country. And I don't think you ever, on a year-to-year basis, I would say ASU's floor is probably 4 wins, even in the worst year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This year I feel, and we're going to get to that later on in this episode, but I think so. In the time that I started as an ASU fan the year before I went to college in 2013. That was the first of the 2 10-win seasons. So I got unrealistic expectations of how
been spoiled.
Yeah, I know. But in that span, I think they've only had one non-6-6. I think they went 5-7 once. And if you look back in ASU like history on like Wikipedia or whatever, go record by year, I think there's like maybe a 3-9 in there somewhere, but it's not like littered with that, So you're right. That is a good it's a good thing to not be obviously bad, like
you always have a reason to watch.
Exactly. Like, let's just take it to the NFL. Like, people aren't making like jokes about how I don't know who's like the Cardinals. Like the Cardinals, people don't think of the Cardinals as being like one of the worst run teams in the NFL. People think of like the Lions.
Well, they're probably pretty close, but that's
people don't think of them that way though, people because they're good enough.
You're talking outward perception. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where ASU is. So, we have some more big picture discussion because we actually got 2 comments.
Yeah, no, I want to give a huge shout out to these 2 comments because they were both extremely insightful. And I'm pulling up. It's the guy who left the really long one.
Yeah. So, okay. So the first one.
Big shout out to that guy. That guy is my favorite dude that has listened to this podcast so far. And I want to give a quick
Brent Armstrong.
Brian Armstrong, just so you're aware. Brent Armstrong, I'm sorry. Just so you're aware, Brent, you are probably one of our first 2 viewers. So put that on your resume. Whatever you need to do with that, you have earned that, my friend. Thank you so much for showing out and providing your feedback on our first episode.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to, so there's 2 comments. Kenneth Evans 6 days ago, he comments, Texas Tech used to be in the border conference with y'all many years ago. So there's some history there. That would be a benefit.
Brent got on him. Brent got on him.
Oh, no, I know. But saying not cultural fit. I think ASU will be the thing with ASU can be a cultural fit in anywhere they go. I feel like because ASU has so many people from all different parts of the country, and it's in terms of moving to the Big 12, it's not a geographical like spit in the face of God like UCLA and USC going to the Big 10. It's not quite as bad. But I like being a rival with Texas Tech, like I wouldn't hate that if we ended up in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting, and you're right. Geographically, like it makes sense.
Enough sense.
Yeah, enough sense. Like I get that for sure.
And we had I mean, when we were in college, we had the Kalen Ballage 8-touchdown game.
Oh, dude, the
Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that game was crazy.
Gump Hayes picking off Patrick Mahomes. That's an all-time ASU moment for sure.
Yeah. That's when ASU's defense was so bad. Like you knew Patrick Mahomes was good, but he was like, well,
what do you think
like 500 yards passing every game? So
what do you think the total of that ASU
going Texas into it?
Game? Yeah, what do you think that was set at?
Well, I forget.
It had to be 70s, right?
Let me look up the final score. But
I'm pretty sure the final score was like in the hundreds. I'm almost certain. I would say that total was probably set at 70, and you're looking at it and you're like, ooh, that seems high. And it still gets exceeded by 30 points.
Okay.
This is insane. That was my favorite game that I've ever covered, for sure.
Oh, me too. That was such a fun game. That was such a fun game.
That one, and then the Washington game.
Oh yeah, where they upset.
2015. Washington was 5th. And they upset Washington. That was pretty cool too.
No, they won that game like 13-10 or something. I think that
it was a slugfest for sure.
I think that was in 2017. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever it was, 16 or 17, it was something like that.
Okay, so the 2016 ASU Texas Tech game, in the 2016 ASU Texas Tech game.
Does it show you what the total was set at?
I'll try to find that. I might not be able to find that.
Down. Yeah.
But guess what the score was?
I'm saying I don't remember, but I think it was something like 61-50 something.
68-55.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's insane. 123 total points. Mahomes threw for 540 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. Kalen Ballage had 7
out of that Sparky formation.
Yeah, no, Texas Tech couldn't stop that.
No,
and I'll give credit for ASU for just pounding it over and over again. Like,
Todd Graham, offensive mastermind.
That's Ballage had 13 carries for 137 yards.
Who did Ballage?
13 for 137. He averaged 10.5. And had 7 touchdowns. He also caught a touchdown as well. So 8 total touchdowns.
That game might have gotten him drafted.
Yeah. I mean, he's still in the league. He's still in the league.
Yeah, he's still playing. He's a Charger, right?
He's been on a lot of teams. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think he might be on the Steel. I don't know. Demario Richard had 30 carries for 109 yards. So another Manny Wilkins, 55 rushing yards. And then newly acquired Chicago Bear, N'Keal Harry, also had a touchdown.
Yes.
I think he'll do better with the Bears. That's just I
think New England is a really tough team to excel with as a wide receiver unless you're a slot guy or you're Randy Moss.
Yeah. Also, I think now they have like Matt Patricia as their offensive coordinator or something. Like,
oh, dude, we could go down a rabbit hole here, Mark. We have to get back on track.
Yeah. Anyway, but Kenneth, thanks for the comment. I'm sure we'll have plenty of barn burner ASU Texas Tech games in the future if that does happen.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Those are excellent. I need to win some money on some overs.
So Brent, we're not going to read the whole comment because it's very long, but thank you for
I honestly though, like salute to you, Brent. Like it gave us so much to think about. So I just want to stress that we truly appreciate your comment.
Yeah. Brent, his main point is that he doesn't really want ASU going to the Big 12 because it would hurt ASU's recruiting of Southern California. And he doesn't really want to deal with no more trips to Otts in Washington or the farm, but hey, you get to go to Lubbock, Stillwater, Waco, Ames, Manhattan, Kansas, plus a trip to Disney World every 3rd or 4th year. That's a good call. So I kind of agree and I kind of don't. And where I do agree is yes, I would rather go to the Pac-12 destinations than a lot of the Big 12 schools. Like that's not, especially since you can just fly into most of them. I do
One
think that
thing,
if
oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
do think that if ASU ends up going to the Big 12, it's probably going to be with Oregon and Washington. So yeah, Oregon and Washington. So you still might have those matchups. And if you don't, then it's because those two went to the Big 10. And so whatever, that's at ASU's control.
The one thing about Brent's comment when I was reading it that I actually agreed with, and I didn't think about, I agreed with most of it. He made a bunch of points that were excellent, but the one thing that stood out to me was sort of the leftovers in Texas that I didn't really think about. Because I think he's right. At this point, ASU would only get like bottom of the barrel 2-star guys. And I think ASU does have the reputation. Obviously, Antonio Pierce is gone, and we have the NCAA investigation looming. Probably going to be the last team that ever gets
if it even comes. Like who knows? If
it ever comes.
But
hopefully, the NCAA dissolves before they can hand anything down. And if they don't, I think ASU is going to be the last school that ever receives any sort of punishment from the NCAA in true ASU fashion.
Yeah,
that would be like fitting for what this program has to deal with. But I absolutely agree with Brent in that sense that they're going to have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to recruit in Texas. And at the very least, they still have that reputation in California. And while they won't get to go to the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum anymore, you're still going to get to go to the Farm and Berkeley and Autzen and Seattle, these places on the West Coast. And I think that's a much more convenient trip than going to these tiny cities that are strictly college towns in the Midwest and in the southern regions. So I absolutely agreed with Brent's point on that, and I appreciated him pointing that out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I think every conference needs to have some like true college town type of vibe, but I get your point there.
I think I'm going to be embarrassed for asking, but what is the Disney World school that he was talking about?
UCF. Orlando. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I had no idea what Disney World was at that point. I was like, oh.
So I think that ASU, if they were in the Big 12, I think that they might. I don't think that it would just, you can never recruit Southern California anymore, because you're still going to be one of the closest schools to the main hub of Southern California. Like you're probably the third closest big school besides obviously USC and UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And also you're easily because maybe Cal and Stanford, it's a equal drive. I don't know, but you're definitely the third closest school to the Inland Empire though, like San Bernardino, Riverside, and there's a ton of kids.
ASU is like significantly closer than the Bay Area by like 6 hours. Yeah.
Well, especially for like if you're getting kids, like I said, from the Inland Empire, like San Bernardino. So I still think that they'll be able to recruit Southern California in the Big 12. I think that he's right that especially with more teams poaching Texas, and the SEC will be in there even more, that it's not going to be like you're hoping for a few guys here and there. But I guess there's just so many kids that play football in Texas that I do think that it's still a lot. But who will see. And ultimately, like if ASU is really going to be like the program that it could be, and maybe some would say should be, is maybe before you go outside of the borders of Arizona, you actually try and just actually prioritize recruiting the state of Arizona, which is not a bad state to recruit from either. Like it's not what it used to be like 10 years ago. So yeah.
Right. No, I remember N'Keal Harry committing, and I was like, oh my God, they actually got a top Arizona recruit.
Because this was in the wake of Christian Kirk going to Tech.
Right. And I remember Connor Murphy, friend of the show, out of Brophy. And his
he wasn't even considering ASU. Yeah.
No, he wasn't. He took his official visit there, but that's a story for another day. I have a lot of stories about that whole experience. But shout out Connor, really good dude. But Jim Harbaugh slept on his floor, man. Like that's how bad Jim Harbaugh wanted to recruit Connor. And I'm not saying we have to do stuff like that. Jim Harbaugh is obviously Jim Harbaugh, but just putting somewhat of an emphasis on keeping in-state recruits in
Yes.
state would be
Yes.
nice. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with at the peak of it, when they were actually getting guys to come in from California, they had the whole Cali Devils thing, which like that's awesome when it's working, but you need to prioritize the freaking Valley. Like,
Yeah.
just have a coach. I mean, you have Sean Aguano on staff who used to coach Chandler, and like when's the last? I feel like Chandler kids never come to ASU.
No,
And
I think
so
he coached
close.
at Saguaro, right? Aguano.
I'm pretty sure he
Either
was.
way, it was an Arizona high school. Either way.
A
But you're
powerhouse.
right. Like you don't see big time Arizona recruits saying like, "Oh, I would love to stay home and play in Arizona." Like they just, and that's the thing with these schools with
That was
these
Chandler.
national reputations. It was Chandler.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wrong. I don't know.
Which makes it worse because Chandler's even closer than Saguaro is to ASU.
And N'Keal Harry went from Chandler to ASU, so you
Yeah.
think like there'd be kids that wanted to follow in his footsteps or whatever, but that is probably one of the biggest downfalls of ASU is their lack of emphasis on in-state recruiting.
Yeah.
I think it's been a problem for a really long time. And you don't see big time programs. Not that ASU is a big time program, but if we're talking about a top 30 program,
mid-size, yeah,
right. Any top 30 program in the country should be able to
top 50. Just
recruit efficiently in their own backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not only and I think there is some of it's like environmental factors in the sense that a lot of people are not from Arizona who live in Arizona, like I'm example A of that. Like I was born in Washington State and I grew up there, and there's a lot of people like that whose parents are like, oh, we're from the Midwest. We moved here when you were 7, and they don't have any connection to ASU. So that's always going to be an issue, but it's not like that's not everyone. And it's not, just don't give yourself a crutch,
18. From 7 to 18, you're growing up in Arizona, and there's no rich. And we talked about this fair weather thing earlier in the show, and I think that's a huge problem. Is there's no rich tradition in Arizona, of anything. I think the closest that we've come to it is the Suns. Like there's
they've been around the longest,
right? So. And there's no rich tradition in Arizona, so there's no reason for these big time recruits to be like, I want to stay home. I want to keep this tradition going. Yeah. What tradition?
Or there's less of a reason. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So thanks for the comments, gentlemen. It's definitely good to get an outside perspective. Yeah. So the season is creeping up closer and closer. I mean, it's next month technically because the NAU game is at the end of August. And it's interesting. Like I think ASU's win total is I've seen it at like 6. I've seen it at 5.5. That feels right.
Yeah.
Like
I think if you take the over or the under on that, you're going to be sweating it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
That's like right where they're going to be.
And so I think a lot of my outlook on the team. So let's just, in the wake of all the transfers out of the program, first it was like Tommy Hill, Johnny Wilson, some of the guys right after the season, then Jaden Daniels transfers after saying he would stay. So that was fun. And then after spring football, you get the whole wave of Ricky Pearsall transferring, Eric Gentry going to USC, LV Bunkley Shelton leaving to Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma. Jermaine Lole is the most recent one. And there's guys I'm forgetting, but just, a lot of important players on the team leaving. And at that time, at like the end of April, when that was all going on, the best quarterback on your roster was Paul Tyson, Trenton Bourguet. Like,
yeah,
at that, like that, it was, their over under would not be like 5.5 Emory Jones didn't come in. And that kind of gets to my point of my expectation just for on the field football changed once Emory Jones announced he was coming to Tempe, not because Emory Jones is going to be like a Heisman winner or first round draft pick, or like, he's not going to be like the guy.
He's going to be steady. You won't have
Yes.
to worry about
Yes.
any sort
Exactly.
of adjustment. He's a guy that's done it before. And that's the biggest thing that stands out to me looking at this depth chart and looking at this roster is graduate transfer, senior transfer, graduate transfer. There's a lot of guys that have done it before and are coming to play for this program. And I think that's
Right.
what we talked about on our last show is they're going to have to hit that that sort of pipeline extremely hard. Guys whose futures won't be compromised because of a looming decision by the NCAA, right?
Yep.
And we're looking at that right now, and that's what I'm seeing on this roster is transfer. I talked about it, and then it's the same thing on the defense. You're looking at the same thing. Merlin Robinson still on the roster too. So we're kind of going, we're going through it, and we've seen a lot of guys that have done it before and are familiar with both this program and the landscape of college football. So you're not getting in a bunch of guys that were 3-star recruits last year and now have to step up.
Right.
You're seeing a lot of guys that have played at a very high level coming over, and now it's up to the coaching staff. And we've seen that obviously this program is not renowned for developing talent, which is exactly what they think they are now going to have to do in the landscape of NIL, which we talked about, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah. No,
I've never done that before. So it's just good that we now don't have to worry about, how is this coaching staff going to develop some of these guys? Because they won't have to. And I think that's why I'm feeling a little optimistic is you're not going to have to see that development with a lot of guys. They're going to have to learn the systems. They're going to have to adjust to a new situation, but they're not going to have to learn what college football is about.
Right.
Yeah.
And don't get us wrong, like this team is not going to win the Pac-12 South next year.
Absolutely not. I'm just saying they're not going to win. They're not going to win 3 games.
No.
And they're not going to be blown out every time they play a team that should beat them. I think they'll be competitive.
Yeah.
I think you'll see a lot of games where it's like, they shouldn't have been in this game, and here they are. Not saying they'll win those games, but I don't think they're going to be 27-0 at half or anything like that.
Yeah. And that's kind of been a common theme with ASU football over the years is when people think that and a somewhat recent example of this was what turned out to be Todd Graham's last year. They're coming off the season where they had the embarrassing Territorial Cup loss. They go 5-7. It was just looking bad. And they go 7-5, which is not fantastic, but it's also this was better than I expected, and 7-5 feels tough for them to get there, but I do think they could go 6-6. I don't have my official record prediction yet, but it feels like a season like that is possible.
Right. I think their absolute ceiling, the best case scenario, everything goes right for them. They steal a couple games. I think the ceiling is 8 wins.
Yep.
But I think the floor is probably somewhere in the 4 to 5 range.
I'd say 4 for the floor.
Yeah.
But you're right. If they win 8 games this year, that would just make last year's team winning 8 games feel even worse.
Right. But that's the best case scenario.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
That's
if everything goes right for you.
That's if you get great turnover luck, make a few long field goals that you otherwise may not have made.
Right. Don't
catch a team on a bad after an injury.
Don't fumble any pick sixes in the state of Utah. Yeah.
I don't think we play in the state of Utah this year. So
thank God.
Yeah, because we host Utah. So it should be there's no ASU fan really has any sort of hope for this season. And I'll say this, I'm a Seahawks fan too, so I'm kind of in the same boat with my NFL team. It is kind of nice to go into a season with no expectations. There's no pressure. Just try to not, look terrible every weekend. it is kind of liberating as a fan to just be like, okay, I'm just going to watch this, and my weekend's not going to be ruined if, they lose a game early in the season that they shouldn't have lost. Like
Right.
it might have
But
been last year for some fans, because there's no expectations.
yeah, I think last year was the year that there was those expectations too.
Oh,
like
definitely.
we talked about it on the last episode. Utah,
And it was national expectations too. It wasn't this wasn't just ASU fans buying into their own hype. There was people who had no stock in ASU. Like their over under win total last year, I think, was 9 games. So yeah.
right, and like going into, especially after the 2020 season where it was like, the USC game and all of those crushing began, and then ending with that territorial cup that was like 77 to whatever it was.
That's right.
But going into last year, obviously you had those expectations, and you're watching it, and you're watching Utah have the season
Right.
that ASU absolutely should have had. And I felt like that's what this Herm Edwards era was sort of trending towards.
Right.
The opportunity to have a season like that, and they had that opportunity, and it just didn't work out. And now we're kind of in the wake of that, where what is the best that can possibly happen here? The NCAA dissolves before they can hand down punishment, like that.
Yeah.
That's literally it.
And this is a different discussion that I don't actually want to get into today, but there's probably some fans of ASU that are just rooting for them to go 2-10. So they can't possibly keep Herm Edwards,
I think Herm Edwards might retire pretty soon anyway. He's been doing it for a long time, but
yeah, I mean, he's in his late 60s, so it's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
But I think what I kind of started this out with, having Emory Jones just gives this team a much higher floor. He played in the SEC last year. He went 6-6 as a starting quarterback in the SEC, which is not that impressive, but he's going to a much worse league. So therefore, I'm looking at Emory Jones's game log from last year. And so he threw for 2,734 yards, 19 touchdowns, 13 picks, good, not great. As kind of we've been saying, he actually rushed 759 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he is a capable, he's a good runner too. And looking at his game log, Florida was a weird team last year. It was Dan Mullen, he kind of lost the locker room. So it's kind of a weird, just a weird season, but I'm looking at September 18th of last year against number 1 Alabama. The Gators lost that game, but they lost it 31-29. And so if I have a quarterback that led his team to basically score 30 points against Alabama,
and I'm pretty sure
that's not bad, and
the game came down to a 2-point conversion, if I'm not
mistaken. Did. And I think it was I think this involved Emory Jones, and he slipped, it was a quarterback draw, and he slipped on it, but whatever, that's just a one.
But taking number 1 Alabama, who's been the superpower of college football for however long,
almost won the national championship this year, and this wasn't even one of the better Alabama teams.
Taking that defense to the brink, where you have to slip to lose that game.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And then actually the next week, I actually happened to be at this game. They hosted Tennessee. They beat the brakes off them 38-14, 21 of 27 for 2 touchdowns. I feel like he's the Alex Smith of college football,
If Alex Smith was good at, I guess Alex Smith wasn't.
No, he was a good runner.
Yeah.
Just in the sense that they're just good. You know what you're getting. And another thing with Emory Jones is that, and this is some just non-scientific research, but I'm looking at a lot of his social media and on Instagram. You see a lot of his old teammates, they really want him to succeed. You can tell, he was a leader of that Florida team, and that's what this team needs. I'm not a huge intangibles guy in sports. I think sometimes people just use intangibles to just make whatever point they want to make about a player. and they can't really be proved wrong about it because it's intangible. But that said, I think that, having a quarterback who like is a good leader and gets the buy-in from his teammates, that could just maybe mean one more win that ASU wouldn't have otherwise got,
Right.
like that stuff does matter to a point. And that's, and when you juxtapose that to, the day that Jaden Daniels transfers and there's the video come out of guys like messing around with his locker, that's a big difference than, ex-Florida teammates being like, go get him at ASU type of deal. So
right. No,
we'll see. I mean, this could all blow up, this could all sound really stupid, when they're 2-4 or whatever, but
I don't think that's what's going to happen, honestly. Like, I think we're going to see a very ASU season.
well, I do think they'll start out poorly because the beginning of their schedule is brutal, but because they play Oklahoma State, USC, and Utah all in the first 5 weeks. So they could easily lose all those games, but
hopefully they beat NAU.
Yeah. Hey, U of A couldn't do that last year. So
I forgot about that. That's brutal.
I know. U of A, their football schedule is insane this year because I think they host their FCS opponent is hosting North Dakota State, which like I would not want ASU to play North Dakota State this year. No. I would not sign up for that at all.
I feel like when's the last time North Dakota State played like an FBS team? Like a Division I team?
I'll have to find that, but
because I feel like I don't know when the last time.
I feel like they beat one of those teams every year. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But like the next time, if you host, like if you scheduled them against like a Mountain West team or something like that, they'd get an auto invite to that conference.
Right.
And they'd say, no, we're good winning a national championship every year. So,
right. Yeah.
North Dakota State.
Yeah, U of A.
That's the QB factor. Then.
Yeah, no kidding. Just checking their schedule. Oh my gosh. Okay, this out of conference schedule. I'll give Ray Anderson and Herm Edwards that make the schedule. Ray Anderson credit for the schedule because ASU's out of conference games are hosting NAU, going on the road to Oklahoma State. That's going to be very difficult. And then, but then you host Eastern Michigan. So it's like you have two kind of gimmies, but U of A week 1 at San Diego State. So you're basically going on the road to play the best Mountain West team that's just probably going to be a loss. Oh, next week they host Mississippi State. So that's going to be really tough. And then you host North Dakota State.
Oh, wait, U of A plays North Dakota State?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how NDSU got brought up on the show. So hey, you know what? This is not a Wildcat podcast, but I'll definitely pay attention to them and how they do this year because they should be improved. But the question is how much improved? Because, yeah. Anyway, kind of wrapping up here. I figured since this is our second podcast, we should kind of just kind of give our background with both of us cover the team as student media. What our kind of personal relationship is with ASU football, and I'll let you go first since you grew up in Peoria and
yeah, no, but that doesn't really change anything because I wasn't really like a diehard, and that kind of brings to our point is I didn't really care about ASU football. I had a friend who played at Stanford, so I watched Stanford like pretty intently all throughout high school, and I didn't really start to follow ASU until I got to college.
Okay,
and then. It was still kind of more casual. Like I was more caught up in the sort of student response to the sports, Okay. I was like, okay, this is fun. Like I like being a part of this. But it wasn't like, oh, what's happening with the roster every year. And I made friends. Yeah, I got to be friends with a couple players on the team and stuff. And that kind of helped me develop like the
Right.
passion that I sort of have for it now. But it wasn't something that I was like born into. I think there's
Right.
it's definitely something that happens in Arizona where you're born into it and you're an
Yeah.
ASU fan your entire life, but that never was it for me, you know.
Right. And everyone
Um,
has a different experience. Yeah.
yeah, everybody has a different experience, and I think that's what you see a lot with those like really passionate fans is it's people that have grown up as ASU fans,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like what has ASU done to attract the interest of the people that didn't necessarily grow up with that, right?
Yep.
It's like they
Yep.
haven't done very much. The only
Yep.
reason I'm as invested as I am is I went to ASU for 4 years, you know?
Right.
So yeah, covered the team for 2 years from I think it was 16 till 18.
Okay.
Those 2 seasons I covered the team in like a video capacity, writing capacity, editor, excuse me, capacity. So yeah, I have that sort of background to it where I'm not like die hard invested, but I've also seen the inner workings of I was mainly the Todd Graham era. I got to cover Herm Edwards' press conference when he got hired, but
That was fun.
um yeah, I was more the Todd Graham era, but did cover the team for 2 years, so that's kind of my background.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I also covered the team for the same 2 years. So both of us were class of 2014 to 2018 at ASU. So our final 2 years covering ASU, and it's definitely it's much different, the problems they're facing at the end of the Todd Graham era versus the end of the Herm Edwards. I mean, end of the Todd Graham era was just like this team can't play defense at all. They can't recruit. Well, ASU can't do that now, but it's for a much different reason. They just couldn't recruit with no NCAA violations. And yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from Washington State. But last year of high school, once I knew I was going to ASU, that's when I kind of started paying attention to them. And obviously when I was in school, and then I'll say like, and then my first 2 years of college and a little bit after college, but I'll say this, like my interest in the program has gone up a lot since kind of the scandal broke, which is kind of weird, but it's just, there's been a lot of information that's come out. There's been just all sorts of, transactions, like players transferring in and out. There's just been a lot of news and just a lot of, and a lot of what's going to happen next. There's just been existential questions about the program and how do they get out of this, and who's going to be the next coach if that happens, like all sorts of stuff like that. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast too. I just kind of want to share my thoughts about all the comings and goings at ASU football. Yeah. So with that, I think we'll wrap up episode 2. Thanks for tuning in the future of when this is recorded. So Colton, you got anything else to add?
Just a huge shout out to the people that have watched our first episode. I don't usually go back and watch things that I was on. I kind of just let it be. And then Mark sent me the link, and I'm generally used to very negative comments because that's what the internet is about. But I saw 2 very positive comments from 2 solid viewers, and I was like,
Who we do not know. These are not plants.
I have no idea who you
Yeah.
guys are, but I respect you because you were positive and you were interested in just a generally productive dialogue. And I was like, I forgot that people like that exist, and it honestly renewed my desire to continue doing this. So I just want to give a huge shout out to those 2 for not just telling us that we don't know anything, but for actually commenting and providing us even talking points to come on the show and discuss. So I hope you continue to do that, both of you guys. I know Brent was one of them, and the other name is escaping me, but I genuinely Kent, right? Kenneth. Okay. Kenneth, Brent, I appreciate both of you guys. Thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts. And I hope you do that this week as well.
Well, I'm sure the negative comments will come soon.
They're coming, but I'm not ready for it yet. So if I said something dumb, maybe save it till episode 3.
You snowflake.
Yeah.
Can't handle the internet criticism.
Mark's the snowflake.
Yeah, that's right. I am. All right. Well, with that, episode 2 is over. Like and subscribe, please, and go Sun Devils.
Yes.